The message came on a cold morning in December. Every screen on every human world went dark for 3 seconds. Then the face appeared. It was not human. The creature had gray skin stretched tight over a skull that seemed too long. Its eyes were black like empty space. When it spoke, its voice was calm and cold. People of Earth, I am Kirin of the Valari Empire. I speak for the Galactic Council. You have spread too far. You have grown too fast. You have become a problem. The Council has decided you will surrender all your ships. You will destroy all your weapons. You will accept our protection. You will obey. If you refuse, you will die. All of you. Every man. Every woman. Every child. You have 30 of your days to answer. The screen went black again. Admiral Tae Woo-jin stood on the bridge of his ship, the horizon's edge. He was 62 years old. He had gray hair and tired eyes. He had fought in 3 wars and lost his wife to cancer 10 years ago. He thought he had seen everything. He was wrong, Sir's first officer said. What do we do? Tae did not answer right away. He looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, beyond the light of their sun, the Council was waiting. They had 10 million warships. Humanity had 800. The math was simple. The math was death. We go home, Tae said finally. We go to Earth. The President will need us. The flight took 6 hours. Tae spent every minute reading about the Council. They were old. Very old. The Valari had been traveling between stars when humans were still living in caves. The Orium were warriors who had never lost a war. The Thesa were silent watchers who knew secrets older than most planets. Together, they had crushed hundreds of species. Some they had enslaved. Some they had destroyed completely. They did not negotiate. They did not show mercy. They simply won. When Tae landed on Earth, the world was already in chaos. People were scared. Some were angry. Some were crying in the streets. The news showed protests in every city. Some people held signs that said surrender in big letters. Others held signs that said fight. President Han Sumi called an emergency meeting. Every leader on Earth came. They gathered in a great hall in Geneva. The room was old and beautiful, built in a time when humans only fought each other. Now they faced something bigger. Tae sat in the back and watched. The leaders argued for hours. Some said they should surrender. We cannot win, they said. We should save our people. Living as servants is better than dying as heroes. Others disagreed. If we surrender, we lose everything, they said. Our freedom, our future. Our children will grow up as slaves. Is that the life we want for them? The debate went on and on. No one could agree. The fear in the room was thick like smoke. Tae could feel it pressing against his chest. Then an old man stood up. His name was Yoon Dae-ho. He was 91 years old. He had fought in more wars than anyone alive. His body was weak now, but his voice was still strong. I have heard enough, Yoon said. The room went quiet. Everyone turned to look at him. You talk about survival. You talk about being smart, but you forget who we are. He walked slowly to the front of the room. Each step seemed to cost him great effort, but his eyes were burning with something fierce. I was born in a small village, he continued. My grandmother used to tell me stories about the old wars. Wars we fought when we had nothing. Wars we fought against enemies who had more soldiers, more weapons, more everything. Do you know what she told me? No one spoke. She told me that Koreans never kneel. Not to emperors, not to invaders, not to anyone. Paused and looked around the room. And neither do humans. A murmur went through the crowd. Yes, they have 10 million ships, Yoon said. Yes, they have conquered 1,000 worlds. But they have never faced us. They have never faced a species that would rather burn their own planet than live on their knees. They do not know what we are. He turned to President Han. Madame President, I am old. I will not live to see the end of this war. But I know one thing. If we surrender today, our children will curse our names forever. They will ask why we gave up without a fight, and we will have no answer. President Han looked at the old general for a long time. Then she stood up. "General Yoon is right," she said. Her voice was steady now. The fear was gone from her eyes. "We did not come this far to kneel to strangers from the stars. We are human. We have survived ice ages and plagues and wars that killed millions. We are still here, and we will still be here when these creatures learn what a mistake they have made." She looked around the room. "We vote now. All in favor of war?" One by one, the hands went up. First 10, then 50, then all of them. Every single leader in that room raised their hand. The vote was unanimous. President Han nodded slowly. "Then it is decided. Send our answer to the council. Tell them we choose war." Admiral Tay felt something strange in his chest. It was not fear. It was something else. Something that felt like fire. He looked at the old general, who was smiling for the first time in years. "You know we might all die," Tay said quietly. Yan nodded. "Yes, but we will die standing. And that is worth something." That night, the message was sent to the stars. It was simple. Just 2 words. We refuse. Somewhere in the darkness of space, the Galactic Council received humanity's answer. And for the first time in 10,000 years, they felt something they did not understand. They felt surprise. The war had begun. When the Council received humanity's answer, they laughed. The great hall of the Valari homeworld was filled with the sound of alien amusement. Creatures of a dozen different species sat in their chairs and made noises of joy. High Arbiter Moreth laughed the loudest. He was the leader of the Valari, the most powerful species in the galaxy. He had ruled for 200 years. In that time, he had crushed 40 rebellions and destroyed 6 species completely. Humanity did not scare him. Humanity was a joke. "They refuse?" he said, his black eyes shining with cruel delight. "These little creatures who have only been in space for 300 years, they refuse us." The Orium commander, a massive being covered in thick brown scales, slammed his fist on the table. "They are insects. We will crush them in days." "In hours," another voice called out. The room filled with more laughter. They were so confident, so sure of their victory. They had seen this before. Small species sometimes tried to resist. It never worked. The council always won. But one creature did not laugh. Sira of the Thessa sat in the corner, silent and still. She was very old, even by council standards. Her skin was pale blue, almost white. Her eyes were large and silver. She had studied many species in her long life. She had studied humanity for 50 years. "You are all fools," she said quietly. The laughter stopped. Everyone turned to look at her. No one spoke to the council that way. Moreth's eyes narrowed. "What did you say?" Sira stood up slowly. "I said you are fools. You know nothing about these creatures. You see only their small fleet in their young history. You do not see what lies beneath. And what lies beneath?" Moreth asked, his voice cold now. "Fire," Sira said. "Endless fire. They have been fighting since the moment they climbed down from trees. They fight over land. They fight over beliefs. They fight over nothing at all. War is in their blood. It is in their bones. It is who they are." The Orium commander laughed again, and they are primitive savages. That makes them easier to kill. "No," Sira said. "That makes them dangerous. We have conquered species who were peaceful, species who surrendered when they saw our power. Humans do not surrender. Their history is full of wars where they should have lost, where they were outnumbered and outmatched. And yet they won. Again and again." She walked toward the center of the room. "Do you know what happened on a small island on their world, long ago? A tiny army faced an invasion force 10 times their size. They knew they would die. Every single one of them. And do you know what they did? No one answered. They stayed. They fought. They died. And their sacrifice gave their people time to survive." Sira looked at Moreth with those ancient silver eyes. "That is who we are fighting. Species that will burn themselves to ash if it means hurting their enemy." Morath waved his hand in dismissal. "Pretty words. But words do not stop warships. Send the fleet. End this quickly." Sira sat back down. You will regret this, Arbiter. But by then it will be too late. Far across the galaxy, Commander Kim Hannah was not sleeping. She had not slept in 3 days. There was no time for sleep. It was barely time to breathe. She stood in the command center of Luna Base, the military headquarters on Earth's moon. Around her, hundreds of soldiers worked at screens and machines. Everyone was moving. Everyone was building. Everyone was preparing. Commander, a young officer named Beek Jun, said, "We have finished converting the mining ships. It gives us another 100 armed vessels." "Not enough," Hannah said. "What about the civilian transports? Still working on them?" "The engineers say they need more time. They have 3 days. After that, the Council fleet arrives." Hannah walked to the main screen. It showed a map of the solar system. Red dots marked the locations of every human ship. There were not many red dots. There were never enough. But Hannah was not looking at the ships. She was looking at the asteroid belt. Millions of rocks floating in space between Mars and Jupiter. Some were small as houses. Others were big as mountains. They were ugly. They were useless. They were also her secret weapon. "Captain Park," she said into her communicator. "Report." A voice crackled back. "Commander, we have finished planting the first wave of weapons. 300 railguns hidden in asteroids. 200 nuclear mines. The Council will fly right into them. Will they see them coming?" "No, ma'am. The asteroids look natural. Your sensors will not detect anything until it is too late." Hannah allowed herself a small smile. The Council expected a fleet battle. Ships against ships. Guns against guns. That was how wars were supposed to work. But humans did not fight the way wars were supposed to work. Humans fought dirty. They fought clever. They fought in ways their enemies never expected. Lieutenant Cho, Hannah called. A young woman appeared at her side. Cho Yun-bai was only 25 years old. She was small and thin, with sharp eyes and quick hands. She was also the most dangerous soldier Hannah had ever met. "Your team is ready?" Hannah asked. "Yes, Commander. 12 soldiers. Fast ships. Lots of explosives." "Good. When the battle begins, you will not fight with the fleet. You will go behind enemy lines, hit their supply ships, destroy their fuel stations. Make them afraid." Yun-bai nodded. "We will make them very afraid, Commander." That night, Hannah finally allowed herself to rest. She lay in her small bed and looked at the ceiling. Through the window, she could see Earth, blue and green and white, beautiful, fragile. Home, she thought about the Council's message. They called humans insects. They said humans were nothing. They were wrong. Insects did not build ships. Insects did not plant traps in asteroid fields. Insects did not send soldiers behind enemy lines to spread chaos and fear. Humans were not insects. Humans were something far more dangerous, something the Council had never faced before. Humans were survivors. Survivors would do anything to live. Hannah closed her eyes and smiled. Let them come, she thought. Let them bring their 10 million ships and their ancient power. We will teach them what it means to fight humans. The Council fleet arrived on a Tuesday. 2,000 ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system. They were beautiful in a terrible way. Long and silver, covered in weapons that could crack planets. Each ship carried thousands of soldiers ready to conquer. Admiral Kieran stood on the bridge of his flagship, a Valari dreadnought called Endless Victory. He looked at the stars ahead and felt nothing but confidence. This would be easy. The humans had 800 ships. He had 2,000. The math was simple. "Scan the system," he ordered. "Find their fleet." His officers worked quickly. After a few minutes, one of them looked up with confusion in his eyes. "Admiral, we cannot find their fleet." "What do you mean?" "There are no ships, sir. No orbital defenses around Earth. Nothing. The system appears empty." Kieran frowned. This made no sense. Where were the humans? Had they already surrendered? Had they run away? Then the speakers came alive with a strange sound. It was music. Human music. Old and powerful. Drums and voices singing in a language Kieran did not understand. The song filled every ship in the fleet. "What is this?" Kieran demanded. No one could answer. The song played on. It was not threatening. It was not a weapon. But somehow, it made Kieran feel cold inside, as if something was very wrong. "Admiral," an officer said, "we are detecting movement in the asteroid belt. Asteroids do not move by themselves. These ones do." "Sir?" On the screen, Kieran watched as dozens of rocks began to glow. Then hundreds. Then thousands. The asteroids were not asteroids at all. They were weapons. Hidden weapons that the humans had placed there weeks ago. Waiting for this exact moment, Captain Park Jinsu sat in his tiny Corvette, hidden behind a mountain of rock and ice. He watched his screen as the Council fleet flew deeper into the trap. His finger rested on a button. One button that would start the war. "Wait," he whispered to himself. Wait. The Council ships were in the center of the field now, surrounded by floating rocks on all sides. They still did not understand what was happening. Park pressed the button. The universe exploded. Railguns hidden in asteroids fired at impossible speeds. Chunks of metal the size of cars flew through space at 20 times the speed of sound. They hit Council ships before anyone could react. Shields flickered and died. Armor cracked like glass. Then the nuclear mines went off. Each explosion was a small sun, bright and hot and deadly. The void filled with fire. Ships that had survived 1,000 battles were torn apart in seconds. Soldiers who had conquered 100 worlds died without ever seeing the enemy. Kieran watched in horror. As 400 of his ships vanished, 400 ships, in 12 minutes. "Pull back," he screamed. "Pull back now." The surviving ships turned and fled. They retreated to the outer edge of the system, far from the death trap of the asteroid belt. Kieran's hands were shaking. His heart was beating too fast. This was not possible. These were primitives. These were insects. How could they do this? The human song still played in his ears. Now he understood. It was not just music. It was a warning. A promise. "We are coming for you." But the ambush was only the beginning. Lieutenant Jo Yunbai led her team through the darkness of space. Their ships were small and fast, painted black so they disappeared against the void. They had left the solar system 3 days ago while the Council was still traveling. Now they were behind enemy lines, deep in Council territory. "Target ahead," her pilot said. "RM supply station. Fuel for 200 warships." Yunbai looked at her team. 12 soldiers. Young and scared and ready to die. She had trained them herself. They were good. "We go in quiet," she said. "Plant the charges. Get out fast." No heroes today. They docked at the station without being detected. The Orem guards were not expecting visitors. Why would they? No enemy had ever come this deep into Council space. The humans moved like shadows. They were smaller than the Orem, which made it easy to hide. They were quieter than the Orem, which made it easy to surprise them. One by one, they planted explosives on fuel tanks and power systems. Then everything went wrong. A guard saw them. He was young and stupid and did not think before he screamed. Alarms filled the station. Doors began to close. "Run!" Yunbai shouted. Her team sprinted toward their ship. They were fast, but the Orem were faster. Gunfire filled the corridor. 2 of her soldiers fell. Then 3.EUN-by kept running. She could not stop. If she stopped, everyone would die. They reached the ship with only 8 soldiers left. The pilot was already warming the engines. Yunbai was the last one through the door. A bullet hit her shoulder. Pain exploded through her body. But she did not fall. "Go," she screamed. The ship launched into space. Behind them, the station began to glow. The explosives were working. The fuel station exploded in a ball of fire that could be seen from 3 planets away. 200 Orem warships would have no fuel now. 200 warships that could not join the war. EU-by sat against the wall, bleeding and smiling. "How many stations left?" she asked. Her pilot checked the screen. 14 in this sector. Then we have work to do. Cross-council space, other human teams were doing the same thing. Hitting supply lines. Destroying communication relays. Burning fuel depots. They were small. They were few. But they were everywhere. The council had expected a war of fleets. A war of great battles and heroic charges. Instead, they got a war of shadows. A war of ghosts who struck from nowhere and disappeared before anyone could respond. A war that did not follow any rules they knew. Back on Earth, Commander Hannah watched the reports come in. The asteroid trap had worked. The strike teams were succeeding. The council was confused and angry and scared. Good, she thought. Let them be scared. Admiral Tay stood beside her. His old face was calm, but his eyes were bright. It will come back, he said. With more ships. More soldiers, I know, Hannah replied. Can we beat them? Hannah thought about the question for a long time. Then she shook her head. No, she said honestly. We cannot beat them. Not with ships and guns. We are too small. Then how do we win? Hannah turned to look at him. We make them bleed. Every day. Every hour. We make this war so painful, so expensive, that they decide we are not worth it. We do not need to destroy them. We just need to make them tired. Tay nodded slowly. That will take a long time. Yes, it will take years. Many people will die. Are we ready for that? Hannah looked out the window at Earth. At the planet where 7 billion humans were waiting for news of the war, waiting to learn if they would live or die. I have no choice, she said. This is our home, and we will never give it up. 6 months had passed since humanity chose war. 6 months of blood and fire and death. The Council had sent wave after wave of ships. They had conquered 3 human colony worlds. They had killed millions of people. But humanity was still fighting. Hi. Arbiter Morith sat in his throne room and stared at the reports. He did not understand. This should have been over in days. Now it had been 6 months, and the war was getting worse. Every week, human strike teams destroyed more supply stations. Every day, human ships appeared from nowhere, fired their weapons, and vanished before anyone could catch them. Every hour, somewhere in council space, something was burning. The numbers did not lie. The council was losing ships faster than they could build them. They were losing soldiers faster than they could train them. They were losing money faster than they could count it. And worst of all, they were losing respect. The minor species of the galaxy were watching. They saw the mighty council struggling against a species that should have been crushed in a week. They began to whisper. They began to wonder if humanity can resist. They thought, maybe we can too. Morith slammed his fist on his throne. This ends now. Send the Death Fleet to their colonies. Burn them all. Burn everything until they surrender. The Valari Death Fleet was legendary. 100 of the most powerful ships ever built. They had destroyed entire civilizations. They had turned green worlds into dead rocks. Nothing could stop them. The fleet jumped to the human colony of New Busan. It was a small world. It's mostly farms and factories. 5 million people lived there. Workers, families, children. The Valari commander gave them 1 hour to surrender. No one did. Sergeant Lee Yuna had been a teacher before the war. She taught history to young students in a small school near the capital city. She loved her job. She loved watching children learn. Now, she was a soldier. She had joined the resistance the day the council invaded. She had learned to fight. She had learned to kill. She had watched friends die. The Valari Death Fleet hung in the sky like dark clouds. Everyone knew what was coming. There was no escape. The ships were too fast, too powerful. But Yuna was not afraid. She had stopped being afraid months ago, Sergeant, one of her fighters said. He was young, maybe 18. His hands were shaking. What do we do? We cannot fight those ships. Yuna looked at him and smiled gently. No, we cannot fight them, but we can hurt them. She led her team of 30 fighters to the fusion reactor beneath the city. It was old and powerful. It provided energy for 200,000 homes. It was also a bomb. If they made it explode, It would kill everything within 50 kilometers, including them. The Valari began their attack at noon. Ships fired beams of light that turned buildings into dust. Soldiers in heavy armor marched through streets, shooting anything that moved. The screams were everywhere. Yuna and her team reached the reactor. They fought through Valari guards. They lost half their people. But they made it to the control room outside. 3,000 Valari soldiers had gathered near the reactor. They were preparing for a victory celebration. They did not know what was coming. Yuna looked at her remaining fighters. 14 people. Farmers, teachers, students, all of them ready to die. "I will not order you to do this," she said. "This is a choice. Each of you must make it yourself." No one left. No one even looked at the door. Yuna nodded. She pressed the button that started the overload. The reactor began to hum. They had 10 minutes. She picked up her communicator and sent one last message. It went out to every human ship, every human world, every human who was listening. "This is Sergeant Lee Yuna of New Busan. The enemy has come to destroy us. They have more ships. They have more soldiers. They think we are weak." She paused and looked at her team. They were holding hands now. Some were crying. Some were praying. All of them were standing. "But we are not weak. We are human, and we do not kneel. Not to emperors. Not to monsters. Not to anyone. Today we die. But tomorrow, our children will still be free." The last thing she said was simple. "We do not kneel." The reactor exploded. The blast destroyed everything. The city, the Valari soldiers, the factories and farms and homes. 3,000 enemy soldiers died in a single second. Yuna and her team died with them. But their message lived on. Across human space, people heard her words. They heard her voice calm and strong even at the end. They heard what she chose to do, and something changed before some humans still wanted to surrender. They thought the war was hopeless. They thought dying was pointless. After New Busan, no one talked about surrender anymore. In the council chamber, Sira of the Thessa stood up and walked toward the door. "Where are you going?" Morith demanded. "Home," she said. "The Thessa are leaving this war. You cannot leave. We are the council." Sira turned and looked at him with those ancient silver eyes. "I warned you. I told you what these creatures are. You did not listen. Now you are learning the hard way. They are dying. We are winning. Are you?" Sira shook her head slowly. "You have killed millions of them. You have burned their worlds. And what do? They keep fighting. They sacrifice themselves to hurt you. They send messages that make their people stronger." She paused. "You are not winning. You are making them angrier." She walked out the door. "When this is over," she said over her shoulder, "do not ask the Thessa for help. You created this war. You will finish it alone." The Orim were next to leave. They had lost too many soldiers. Their people were asking questions. Why are we dying for the Valari? Why is this war still happening? One by one, the council began to crack. Admiral Tay watched the reports from his ship near Saturn. The Thessa had left. The Orim were retreating. Even the Valari were starting to argue among themselves. "It is working," Commander Hannah said beside him. "They are breaking." Yes, Tay agreed. "But we are breaking too." He was right. Humanity had lost 2 million soldiers. They had lost 5 colony worlds. They had lost ships and factories and farms. The war was hurting everyone. But there was a difference. Humanity knew what they were fighting for. They had seen Yuna's message. They had heard her voice. They understood that this was not just a war for territory or power. This was a war for survival, for freedom, for the right to exist, and humans would never give that up, Admiral, a young officer, said. "The Council fleet is regrouping near the Valari homeworld. They are calling for more ships." Tay looked at the map. He saw the enemy forces. He saw the weakness in their formation. He saw an opportunity. "How many ships can we gather?" He asked Tana. Check the numbers. 600. "It is everything we have, and gather them all." We are going to the Valari homeworld. Hana stared at him. That is suicide. They have 4,000 ships there. I do not want to fight them, Tay said. I want to scare them. I want them to see human ships in their sky for the first time in their history. I want them to know that no one is safe. Hana understood. This was not about winning a battle. This was about sending a message, just like Yuna had done. I will give the orders, she said. Tay nodded and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, Yuna's ashes were floating in space. Her body was gone, but her spirit was with every human who still fought. We do not kneel, she had said, to whisper the words to himself. They felt like a promise. They felt like a prayer. We do not kneel. The Valari homeworld was called Throne of Stars. It was a beautiful planet with silver oceans and purple forests. The Valari had ruled from here for 10,000 years. No enemy had ever come close. No enemy had ever dared until now. Admiral Tay led 600 human ships through faster-than-light travel. They had flown for 3 days across the galaxy. Every person on every ship knew they might not return. They came anyway. When they dropped out of hyperspace, the Valari were waiting. 4,000 warships surrounded the planet. Defense platforms covered every orbit. Weapons powerful enough to crack moons pointed at the human fleet. On the bridge of his ship, Tay looked at the enemy forces. They were massive, overwhelming, beautiful in a terrible way. Admiral, his first officer, said, they are charging weapons. No. Should we prepare to fight? Tay shook his head. No, we are not here to fight. Begin the broadcast. Every screen on the Valari homeworld went dark. Then a human face appeared. It was President Han Sumi speaking from Earth. People of the Valari, I am the leader of humanity. 6 months ago, your council gave us a choice. Surrender or die. We chose neither. We chose to fight. The message played on every street, in every home, on every ship. Billions of Valari stopped what they were doing and watched. You have killed millions of our people. You have burned our worlds. You have tried to crush us. And we are still here. Images began to appear. Human shipyards working day and night. Human soldiers training in every corner of space. Human scientists building weapons that the Council had never seen. You called us insects. You laughed when we refused your demands. You thought this would be easy? The images changed. Now they showed Council ships burning. Supply stations exploding. Soldiers falling to human weapons. It was not easy. It will never be easy. We are human. We do not surrender. We do not kneel. We fight until we cannot stand, and then we fight on our knees. Han's face became hard, cold, like steel in winter. Today our ships fly in your sky. We could bomb your cities. We could burn your farms. We could do to you what you did to us. She paused for a long moment. We will not, because we are not you. We did not want this war. We do not want to kill your children or destroy your homes. We want only one thing, freedom. The right to live our lives without fear of your empire. Her voice softened now, almost gentle. We're offering you a choice. The same choice you offered us, peace or war. You can keep fighting, and we will keep fighting, and millions more will die on both sides. Or you can accept that we are not your enemies. We are not your slaves. We are equals. The screen showed one final image. A massive ship, bigger than anything the Council had ever built. It emerged from behind Saturn's moon, long and dark and bristling with weapons. This is the Unyielding, the first of our new battleships. We built it in 6 months while fighting your war. We will build 100 more, 1,000 more. We will never stop building. We will never stop fighting. Not until we are free. Han looked directly at the camera. Choose peace or death. You have 1 day. The broadcast ended. High Arbiter Morath watched from his palace. His hands were shaking. His hearts were beating too fast. For the first time in 200 years, he felt afraid. Around him, his advisors were arguing. Some wanted to attack the human fleet immediately. Others wanted to negotiate. Others wanted to run away and hide. Outside the palace, the people of the Valari homeworld were watching the sky. They could see the human ships. Small points of light that should not be there. Points of light that said, "You are not safe anymore." For 10,000 years, the Valari had been the conquerors. Now, they understood what it felt like to be conquered. A message arrived from the Orim. They refused to send more ships. A message arrived from the Thesa. They demanded the Council accept peace. A message arrived from 12 minor species. They threatened to rebel if the war continued. Marath read each message with growing horror. The Council was falling apart. Everything he had built, everything the Valari had built for 10,000 years, was crumbling because of one small species that refused to die. Arbiter, one of his generals, said, "We can still win. We have more ships, more soldiers. We can enough." Morth raised his hand. The room went silent. He walked to the window and looked at the sky. The human ships were still there, watching, waiting. He thought about the war, about the battles and the bombings and the deaths, about the human woman who blew herself up rather than surrender, about the human soldiers who fought to the last breath. These creatures were not like the others. They could not be scared. They could not be broken. They could only be killed one by one until none were left, and even then, Morth was not sure they would stop. "Send the message," he said quietly. "Arbiter, tell the humans, accept. We will negotiate for peace." The general stared at him. "But Arbiter, do it." Morath turned and looked at his council. "This war is over. We cannot win it. We can only die in it. And I will not let the Valari die for pride." The message was sent. 3 days later, the Treaty of Soul was signed. The terms were simple. Humanity would be recognized as equals. All human colonies would be returned. The Council would pay for the damage they had caused, and humanity would receive a permanent seat on the Galactic Council. For the first time in history, species had fought the Council and won. On Earth, President Han spoke to the world. Billions of people watched. Some were crying. Some were laughing. Some were doing both. "They told us we were young," she said. "They told us we were weak. They told us to kneel, and we refused. Today we stand not as conquerors, but as equals. Let this be our message to the stars. Humanity will trade with you, learn from you, grow with you, but we will never bow to tyrants again." The crowd cheered. The sound was like thunder. Like a storm that covered the entire planet, Admiral Tay watched from his ship. He was tired, so very tired. The war had taken everything from him. His health, his friends, his peace of mind. But when he looked at Earth, he felt something warm in his chest. Pride, hope, love for the strange and stubborn species that called that little blue planet. Home Commander Hannah found him standing at the window. "What will you do now?" she asked. "Rest," he said. "I have a house on Mars, a small garden. I think I will grow tomatoes." Hannah smiled. "You deserve it, and you. I have been asked to be the first ambassador to the Thesa. Sira has invited me to their homeworld." Tay nodded. She was wise. She saw what we are when the others were blind. "Yes." Hannah looked out at the stars. "I think she and I will be friends." In the years that followed, humanity grew. They built new ships and new colonies. They traded with the Thesa and the other species who had watched the war. They learned secrets of the galaxy that the Council had hidden for millennia, and in the archives of every species in the galaxy, the entry about humanity was changed. Where it once said minor species, potential threat, it now said something else. Do not provoke, do not threaten, do not underestimate. They chose war once, they will choose it again. They must, and they will win. The old general, Yun Deho, died 3 weeks after the peace treaty was signed. He was 92 years old. He died in his sleep, with a smile on his face. They buried him on a hill overlooking the ocean. Thousands of people came, presidents and generals and common soldiers. They stood in the rain and listened as Admiral Tay spoke. He told us not to kneel, Tay said, He was right. We did not kneel. We will never kneel. He looked at the grave, at the simple stone that marked where the old man rested. Sleep well, General. You have earned it. The universe knows our name now, and they will never forget. The rain fell. The people bowed their heads, and somewhere in the stars, the other species of the galaxy looked toward a small planet, orbiting an ordinary sun, and felt something they had never felt before. Respect, fear, and work. Just a little bit of hope. Because if humanity could stand against the darkness, maybe others could too. Maybe the galaxy was not just for the strong. Maybe the small and the young and the stubborn had a place as well. Maybe there was room for everyone who refused to kneel.